It wasn't until I started working in the hospital where I realized that everybody's lifestyle is so different, and some people have a really good lifestyle and some people don't. On this episode of the PT Talk series, I'm going to be talking about my patient experience that actually happened today that just blew my mind. Let's rewind it back a little bit. My patient is coming in for a GI bleed, and there is a lot of things that have been going on leading up to this moment. But essentially, this patient had multiple events of throwing up blood, and this patient spent 7 days straight throwing up blood until he called the paramedic. And this story, it just keeps adding on to each other when you think about all the things that he could have done way earlier, or at least that I think as a physical therapist and as a person that you would think that you should do right away. For example, if you throw up blood for just one time, maybe you'll kind of disregard it or just wait it out. But if you happen to throw up blood the second day or third day, wouldn't you think that you would call the ambulance? Well, this guy, my patient, he waited 7 days after he threw up blood every single day. And when I asked him, he said that, well, my sister had the same exact thing and she went to the emergency room and they said it was nothing. And so I didn't call. That is the kind of the first warning that I realized that this patient had poor insight on his safety and his potential condition, which eventually led to his GI bleed. Now, this patient also has been living in a mobile home with 4 steps to enter, and his lifestyle involves spending most of his day in his chair watching TV, and he doesn't do much cooking because he can't physically stand up too long. And I'm working with him right now. It's been a couple days, and his standing tolerance is only about, let's just say, 5 seconds generously, right? And he was independent prior. He was going to grocery stores. He was driving. And so you would think that, okay, this person has a relatively good lifestyle if they were able to drive, get groceries, and things like that. Now, where it gets pretty interesting is my patient gets groceries and he takes it back to his truck. He drives home, and what he does is, because he already has a hard time getting up those 4 steps into his mobile home, he does not bring his groceries into the home because most of his effort has to be just getting into his home. Now, you're starting to think the same exact thing that I was thinking. How do you eat? Why do you leave your groceries in the car? This person lives in Las Vegas in the summer heat. You're still eating the food after it's been sitting in the car for days. And mind you, he leaves groceries for 2 to 3 weeks. What he does is whenever he needs something, he goes down those steps, he goes to his truck, he grabs what he needs, and he goes back up those steps. Again, this is where the physical therapy mind in me is going. And I ask him, well, why don't you just take multiple trips and take a few things at a time and go up those steps? He says, well, that's going to take about 45 minutes to do, and I'd rather just leave it in the car. I looked at him in a blank stare, just trying to come up with something to say that's not judgmental, but also really just trying to figure out why, right? Why is he doing this? Is it a behavioral issue? Is it a cognitive issue? Is it just poor insight on his end? Is this how he's been living his life the past couple years? And he says that it's much easier for him to just leave it in the car and just grab what he needs rather than just spending the 45 minutes doing multiple trips. And mind you, he told me that he's getting majority canned goods like canned beans and because he makes a lot of chili, but also bread. So he says that he leaves a loaf of bread in his car. So kind of bringing it back, he's here for a GI bleed. And things that led up to it was he also loves peanut butter. and he bought jars and jars and jars of peanut butter. Later on, he would have stomach issues that he wouldn't know why. And again, he's the type to not call the paramedic. Later on, he found out that, or I guess he looked up an article saying that there was a recall on some peanut butter and that there is kind of a bacteria in the peanut butter that he's been eating. And he goes, well, I kept eating the rest of the peanut butter jars because I bought 7 and I'm just not going to let it go to waste. Knowing that there is bacteria in the peanut butter that was eating. And that's probably why he was having some stomach issues. Now, I'm trying to piece everything together. Again, as a physical therapist, I have to get the broad picture. I'm not going to base everything off of him eating just the peanut butter or, him leaving the groceries in the car. I have to figure out why. And a big part of it was that he has leg pain. And as I kept asking him this, his reasoning was that the more that he does, the more leg pain that he has. And so he doesn't do too much. Over the years, it's caused him to have to use a shopping cart from the parking lot to his Albertsons. And then when he gets inside of the Albertsons, he goes around in an electric scooter, and then he picks up off the shelves, and then he does the same thing going back to his truck. And I think as a physical therapist, this is perfect because this is where I jump in and I educate him on the pain cycle, deconditioning, immobility, where a lot of people think that the more that you move, the more painful you get. And the more painful you get, the more likely you are to not want to move. And so a lot of people, especially when they're alone and they don't have anybody to tell them what to do, when to do it, what's important to them, they're just going to be sedentary because they are avoiding pain. And this is where it kind of goes all wrong. And it's important to know that the more pain that you have, let's first figure out why you're having pain. And 2, let's try to embed in your mentality and your mind that exercise is going to help with that pain. And the more that you exercise, the less pain that you feel. And the more likely you are to be able to go up your 4 steps into your mobile home. And the more likely you are to be able to carry a bag of groceries into your home. And so I educated him on all of this, only for him to tell me that he is completely fine with leaving his stuff in the car. And again, I'm trying to circle around the fact that, I don't care about him leaving his food in the car because I want to solve the root issue. And that's kind of this thought that because he is in pain, he's not going to do it. And there is good pain and there is bad pain. And, this could be a whole different video. But I think it's just crazy that there are lifestyles where people are completely okay with the medical consequences of what they're doing, and they go to the hospital and they are aware of what they're doing, and they're definitely okay with going back home and continuing the lifestyle that brought them into the hospital. I work in a rehab hospital where my number one goal is to send people home and to keep them home. But when there are people that are okay going home, going back to the same lifestyle, I already know that they're going to go back to the hospital. And there is about a 13% readmission rate when it comes to going home after hospitalization from a rehab department. But yeah, that is something that I have just never heard before, where somebody leaves their groceries in the car, probably boiling up and molding and rotting, and just the insight. And I document this every single time where this patient has decreased insight on his safety and his condition, and it's being limited by fear of falling behaviors and pain apprehension because of his quadricep pain. And I document all this. But at what point will somebody kind of listen to medical advice from somebody who sees it every single day. And I see this all the time where somebody's sedentary. And this is actually a pretty extreme because, when you have stomach issues and it's causing you to throw up blood, first of all, you should be seeking medical attention, not 7 days after. And if you know that you are eating something with bacteria that's causing you some stomach issues, you should probably stop eating it, not keep eating it because you bought 7 jars of peanut butter. These are just things that are running through my mind, and I talk with my coworkers. And I try to talk with this patient about all of this in a professional manner without being judgmental and being educational. But let me know what your thoughts are on that. Have you experienced anything like that as a therapist, as a healthcare worker, a nurse? And is there anything worse that you've heard about? Because this is definitely up there in terms of one of the probably most surprising lifestyles that I have heard of. And this is really close by to where I work. And I know, the environment that he lives in. I know how hot it gets. And man, interesting things that I experience as a physical therapist. But that is today's episode of the PT Talk. I can't wait to talk about more stuff with you. So tune in, subscribe, and thanks for supporting.